I'm a primary care doctor at the VA in Seattle. I'm director of our primary care innovation lab and an assistant professor in the Department of Medicine, and work with the residents and mostly do clinical work in primary care and women's health clinic here at the VA. And I'm going to talk with you today about getting things done. And, you know, the word I guess we use is productivity, although I will say that has a lot of different meanings. And here, hopefully not just all negative ones about how productive you are in clinic and how much you can bill is your productivity, but really just how to get things done and have more time for leisure and enjoyment and other things outside of work. So I would like everyone to, while we kind of get started, if you haven't already, my assignment to you is to get something where you can take some notes and just quick off the top of your head, write down a few things that are on your mind that you have to do. I need to get some groceries tonight. I need to do this big project at work. Whatever you have on the top of your head, go ahead and write it down, and we'll reference it later during the talk. I think I can leave this here. All right. And if people want to ask questions in the chat, I'll stop periodically and we can monitor that. I'm also free to, interact, but there should be some time at the end for discussion as well. And we can kind of use that time. All right, so what are we going to talk about in the next 40 minutes or so? We are going to talk about tackling your email, mastering it. Don't let it control you. We're going to talk about making a plan to manage tasks and projects, which is your to-do list, making a to-do list and how to get through it. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is scheduling your time so that you can get all those things done. All right, so first, going to our email. Email is really a way to communicate, but it's not a great way to communicate. I think, you got other options, texting, calls, walking over to someone to talk to them. I feel like email is a good spot to get alerts and messages out, but if you're going to be having a back and forth, it's just a way other people are going to ask for you to do things and assign you things that you then need to follow up on and do. And so having a strategy to manage your email so that you're not just spending all day inside your inbox, because you probably could just run from one thing to the next. You want to approach it with some strategy so you're not just spending your time there. So we're going to go over next here some email rules. So these email rules we're going to call the 5 Ds and the 2-minute rule that you should apply when you're processing email. So the 5 Ds, first one is just to delete it. So if the message is spam, junk, not that important to you, you're not going to read it later, just delete it. Second one is to do it. And here's where the 2-minute rule comes in. If it's quick and you're processing or looking through your email inbox, you can do a quick reply, follow up on it, just do it right then. Do whatever action is requested of you in that moment. And I even would say, maybe even if it's going to take just a little bit even longer, 5 minutes or less, just do it. The third is to delegate it. So instead of letting it sit there and fester, not sure what to do, pass it on to someone who you think does know what to do with it. So if you think this is, there might be someone better to handle it, someone who has more information, try to make a connection or pass it to them with the ask to do it. The fourth D is to deposit it. So everyone should have some sort of archiving system or place that you're keeping important files or notices that come through. I recommend not keeping it in your email, although Outlook has improved somewhat and you can search it to try to find your old emails. But I don't know if you're like me, sometimes I'm banging my head against the wall trying to search through Outlook for that attachment that I can no longer find that someone sent me some point in time. So the keyword search and going through your folders is challenging, but as long as you've saved it somewhere, And I'm going to make a few recommendations on the next slide about that. And then the 5th D is to defer it. And this will link into kind of managing your to-do list. But essentially, if this email that you've received requires some more lengthy action, like maybe you have to update your annual CV and IDP and things for the department, that's going to be something that you're going to defer, and you need to work on it at a later time. Or maybe you've had a request to review someone's research proposal or work on an abstract or a project. You're going to need to set aside time to do it. This should go onto your to-do list, into your planner, and then be scheduled. And I have this question on this slide. It's really more for you to think about. How and where are you saving important information now when you get it in an email? And do you have a system? Here are some tools that you can use on locations to save things from your email or other important files that you are sent. I recommend for work things to use OneDrive, because that's a web application in the cloud that you can also get onto your desktop, and that can travel with you as long as you can log in. Other ones that I can't really access from the VA, so I don't use them, but perhaps those of you who don't work at the VA may also find useful are Google Drive and Dropbox. I will say I have used all of these, and I do use Google Drive and Evernote just in my personal life, not in my work life. And OneDrive and Teams folders is where I archive most things now. Email, you can do it. Again, it's hard to search. Other options include just desktop folders, but those don't travel with you. I also have a hard drive there or an external hard drive. So, if it's something you're only accessing at work on that computer or at home, sure, you can try that. Just remember it's not going to travel. And then same with paper. I always think paper is the least useful. But if you're going to have paper, just make sure you have some good categories so that you can find things later. And next, we're going to move on to just a few tips. So only check your email in a scheduled block of time. Turn off notifications, because these are just distractions. So if you get any pop-up alerts on your phone or watch, or even on the little desktop icon, you should just turn those off, because otherwise you're going to get sucked back into email when you're trying to work on something else. If you don't know how to turn it off, and there is a way in Outlook settings to turn off the notifications so they don't pop up at you. Another tip is to create canned responses or a templated response. So if you get asked, in your role, you get asked the same questions again and again, maybe you have some FAQs that are asked of you, have a templated response. You can save these in Outlook as a template, or you can actually create it as a signature. So, in your signatures, you usually just put your signature, but you can have a signature that is one of your canned responses, like, thanks for asking this question. You need to talk to this person. That can be a template that you just are sending again and again. Or, when I was a chief resident, did a ton of this, trying to seek talk or invite people to give talks, do thank you letters and follow-ups. I just had templates that I would use for those. Fourth tip is to create email rules. So if you get emails that are spam or things that you never open, you probably could create a rule to just archive it or dump it into your spam folder. Maybe you want some things to be flagged more important from certain email addresses. So all those things, you can do that in a rule. And similarly, I guess for those that are spam or junk truly, just unsubscribe from the list altogether so that you have less clutter to go through in your email. All right, now I'm going to move on. And I know I'm going through kind of fast, but I'll make sure everyone has access to the slides, and I want to save some time to discuss at the end. So kind of move through these quickly. We're going to talk about task management. Really, this is making a to-do list, getting it done, checking it off. That's what I mean by task management. And I feel that this is really important for being an accountable person that people want to work with, because when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it and you follow up and you do it on the time you say, and people know what to expect from you. So this principle, or being able to know what tasks you need to do and following through, is really important for your work life and your home life. And it's easy to do. You just have to build some habits and figure out how you want to do it. All right, let's talk about steps for conquering your to-do list and getting it done. So here I have these 4 steps that we're going to go through each one in a little bit more detail. Step 1 is to collect and capture everything that you need to do. The second is organize and plan. The third is to actually do it. And the 4th step is to review it. And now we'll go into each of these. So step 1, collect and capture. So here is the process of writing it down and moving things out of your mind, or that pop into your head, or when you have a conversation or you see that email, move it and write it down. And the more specific you can be when you write it down, the better, because this will help you understand what it is you wanted to do. So write a message to your future self so that you will remember it. So I have here as an example of, like, if you wrote down a to-do as, oh, my anniversary weekend's coming up, but what did you mean? Oh, I meant I want to make a reservation at my restaurant for this Saturday. So making it specific will also help you later when you're reviewing it to know what you meant. And everything can go on this list. So thoughts that pop into your head, ideas, things from email, things from meeting, follow-up, projects, groceries, anything should all go on the list. And my question for you here is, how are you doing this now? How is it working for you? Just to kind of think about that. And I want everyone to look at that list you either brought with you or that you wrote down at the beginning today. And I want to ask you, is it specific enough? Do you still understand what you wanted or needed to do? And if there's anything on your list that you could add some clarity to, or you're not sure that you would remember in, let's say, a week from now, rewrite it. So cross it out and rewrite it. And monitoring the chat from Chris Knight that this is very David Allen. Yes. This is heavily influenced by him and others in this space. All right, hopefully if you've had to rewrite anything, you're working on it or can do that. On this next slide, I'm just showing some tools or places where you can keep your to-do list. So this can be old school, pen and paper, works great if you keep it around you at all times. A little bit not so good if you're on, let's say, wards or clinic, and you stuff that piece of paper in your pocket and not sure where it went a few hours later. Reminders on your phone. There's some, Evernote has a free version. There's other things that exist like Todoist and Asana that people love, but they're expensive or you have to pay for them. That's the thing. We all have access to Microsoft To Do through our UW accounts, through our Office 365. So again, like I had to recommend OneDrive for archiving, I recommend checking out Microsoft To Do, and I'll show you a little bit more of what that looks like in case people are not familiar with it later. And really, I don't think it matters which way you're going to capture things as long as you capture it. That's what's important. And you need at least a place where you're going to keep everything in one spot. I do sometimes write down things as pen and paper, but I translate it into something electronic because I can't organize things on pen and paper very well, which is the next step. All right, this has kind of got a busy slide here, but just talking about organizing your to-do list. So at the end of the day or on some regular frequency, you need to look at the list. Otherwise, you will not get it done. So review what you wrote down. And if there's anything that, again, isn't clear, you can add clarity here. Or if there's anything that's really a large task, so look at your list now that you guys wrote. Is there anything that's like large? It's actually a project that's probably multiple steps. So perhaps I have this task of like, I need to make this vacation schedule. But what I actually need to do is I need to know what's this process, and I need to ask people to make vacation requests. So there's multiple actions within that one task. Try to break those down if they're going to be happening, at different points in time. If you're using an electronic to-do list, or like a place where you're saving everything, you can tag and organize that into sublists. So you can do that with like iPhone reminders. You can have different shared like different categorizations for your list, and you can do that in Microsoft To Do, which I'll show on the next slide. If you're doing a project and you realize these are all just project steps, you may have a completely separate area that you keep these if you need to communicate with other people on your project team. Or you may just keep them on your personal list. I think either one works. It just depends on how your team workflow is around the project. Then once you have your list, you've kind of got things captured and organized, you need to figure out what's important and prioritize. So I kind of follow a similar process that I might have for my email of like, well, do I just delete this because I don't need to do it anymore? Is this something I'm going to delegate? Is this something that needs to be deferred or scheduled? And knowing what's important, sometimes it's helpful just to have like a due date or a deadline. Those tend to get higher priority. But also there are going to be things that they're important to you, but they're not timely. They don't need to be done at a certain time. And maybe you need to prioritize those in your schedule. Otherwise, you won't work on it. And so you're going to need to figure out and schedule some sort of priority and ranking list and pick a time where you'll accomplish it. So again, I'm going to show this on the next slide, but a reason I like the To-Do app is because you can put a reminder time for when it's going to like pop back up at you and say, oh, now I need to work on this. So if you write it on pen and paper, you can put next to your pen and paper the date you think you want to work on it or an approximate due date. But unless you're rewriting your list frequently, you may not really have it in an organized way. And there's no way to really say, remind me in 3 months. Also with the To-Do app, you could put in a recurring action. So maybe you need to work on a certain project or scheduling and you need to do it once a month, a certain task. You can put that on there electronically and you can actually set a recurring reminder. So it pops back up on your to-do list as something to work on, on that day or that week. I saw there was a couple things into the chat, so I'm going to take a second to look at it before we go on to the next slide. Okay, questions about paper versus electronic, which I am getting on. Workflowy is a plug from Mayuri for making lists. Chris commented about saying, hey Siri. Courtney says paper lists are very satisfying to check off. Yes, I like to check things off, but To Do makes a little bell noise. So if you turn your sound on and you click it off, it's a very satisfying ding like that you've got it done. So don't worry, satisfaction still exists in the electronic world. And I should get back to what Chris said about using Siri, because I didn't say that when I said using an iPhone list. Like that's great. So if I'm like out somewhere and I'm not at work and it's a life thing that I need to follow up on, I'm often just telling Siri on my watch or my phone to remind me later. A much smaller list that I keep on my phone. I try to put everything into To Do. And because I work at the VA and cannot access VA's Microsoft from home, I use my UW Microsoft login to track to-dos because I can access it from home and I can't access the VA's as easily. Let's see, did I get to my next slide? Yes. Okay, so here's just a screenshot of Microsoft To Do. It's busy looking here, but if you have some time later to play around with the app, essentially you just have this area called tasks where you just can type in anything. So this is where you're capturing, just put in whatever it is you have to do, type it in there. When you're clicking on it, you can set a due date. So I can say it's due today, it's due next week. Sometimes I put in a due date. It's not a real due date, but it's one I want to look at it or I want to work at it. So I might say, okay, due next week, because next week I need to think about this project or figure out a time to work on it. Over here, I'm just showing that if once you've assigned it a date, it goes into this area called planned. And so that's what I'm looking at most days is what did I have planned for today? And it'll show me everything that I had marked as due that day. And it will show you like days you missed, recent days you missed, and upcoming days. So you're not just looking at one day. You can kind of see a week at a time. Tasks, again, that's where we are here. That's kind of the home page of just writing down things. And then you have the option to create categories, just like you do for these other apps as well, iPhone reminders. So I have one that's like grocery list, and you can put everything for grocery lists there. And then Cassidy says you can add a shortcut to have Siri go to your to-do list, to your Microsoft To Do. That sounds even better maybe than having Siri just go to Siri. So great tip. Another option for tracking things you need to get done for a project is like using a Kanban board or Kanban board. I don't know how you say it. I say Kanban. I would think of this as both project planning and a to-do list. You can make these just on a whiteboard, or you can use an app to do it. But what I like is that you break things down into things you need to do, things you are doing or working on, and things that are done. So these can be nice if you have a group project and there are different to-dos and you're going to assign people to work on different parts. And when they're in the middle of working on it, it gets to move over to the doing section. And then finally, it'll move over to being done. And for someone who also likes the satisfaction of a click, sometimes it's satisfying to see like the different pieces of the project move over. And you can have these for your project. And again, some tools for that. This could be physical. You could just put it up on a whiteboard and move sticky notes if you're in a shared space, which I doubt many of us are these days. One that's popular and free is called Trello. MeisterTask and Kanban Flow, you have to pay, I believe, a fee, or they have a free version, but it's limited. And Microsoft kind of has this. They have an app called Planner. I've kind of tried to use it, but I haven't found it doesn't look as good as Trello. It's not quite as easy, but it has similar functionality. I think Microsoft has basically gone to all these other apps and just takes the bits and pieces to make their own software. So that's something you can use. You should have access to also through our Office 365. So if you're working on a project with other people, maybe this is an option for you to monitor project-related activities. And here's an example of an old one that I made. I haven't really been using this lately, but here I have columns of to do. Gotta get oh, here we go. Just realized I didn't have my thing on. So yeah, so you have your to-dos, doing, done, and then I added one here that had calendar. Just, I could put things I need to do. I need to email these slides. I needed to make my slides, etc. And I got to move it over as I worked on it. All right, so for some people who are visual, this might be something you would like to use for project-related work. I think the critical key here is you need to be working with other people who will also use the software, because that's usually my downfall, is finding that it doesn't work if you're the only person who's going to use it. Then you might as well just have your own to-do list. But yeah, Chris says Trello's great for group projects, moving tasks around. Yeah, and you can also assign, if it's a shared board, you can assign things to people. At least I know in the Planner app on Microsoft. You can assign it to other people in your organization. But again, they need to know they're being assigned it and that they're part of the group working on it for it to work. All right, next slide here is to go to step number 3. So if you remember, we were doing capturing, and then we were organizing, and then step 3 is to actually do it. So do the things on your list. And so thinking about, okay, I made my list, I prioritized it, I have things showing up as like they're going to be due or need to do soon. Like, how do you make your time so that you're actually going to get it done and, get to do your satisfying check offs. So I am going to transition a little bit mid topic to now go on to the time management, which is the scheduling component of getting things done, avoiding distractions, creating time and space to focus, and, again, get through those things that you wanted to accomplish. So first I'm going to say you're going to start with your calendar. So here's a snapshot, like an old snapshot of my Outlook, kind of looking like not so great. But I think everyone's probably looks like this or even worse. I usually start with Outlook or my physical calendar. So I do have a planner also, and I have Outlook. And I do think there's value in the pen and paper for planning my day. So I do that. But to start, I start with a calendar and just schedule off things that cannot be moved. This is an outdated calendar, but you can see there are like some larger chunks of time. So like things that cannot be moved are like when I'm in clinic. Those are immobile things that are going to show up every week. Maybe like quarterly committee meetings, weekly meetings, monthly meetings that are not really in your control. They're like group shared things that are scheduled and you are supposed to attend. Those are like the blocks that you cannot move. And those should go on, I would argue, your Outlook, because you can see it every week, or whatever calendar, Google Calendar, or if you use iOS, the Apple Calendar, you can do that. iCal, that's what it's called. You can do it on iCal. All right, so you got your blocks. Then you also need to make blocks for thinking and doing things on your to-do list. So they can be small or large. This was just an example of like, okay, on my day, I have this block that's like, okay, I need to do some administrative work. Here's a block for this research meeting that I don't control, but it can't be moved. Here's a block for clinic that can't be moved. And here's a block for checking email at the end of my day, not the start of my day, to distract me. So just think about like, what kind of person am I? When do I like to work? When do I get my best work done? Schedule that meeting with yourself. So that's why I called it admin work here, but you can call it whatever you want. Deep thinking, project time. Just want it to look like you're unavailable because you are. You've scheduled this meeting with yourself. And then one of the hardest parts is then protecting it, because you know ultimately that you are technically kind of still free at that time. So you want to put that block there and then really try to stick to it. I have a problem with meeting creep sometimes into my project time. And so just know that it happens and know what you're willing to let creep in or not. And then I have this picture here of like this is the brand of planner I use, though mine looks slightly different than this. So I've written out like, okay, here's my chunks of time that I have on my schedule for the day. And now I'm just gonna pick a few things that I'm gonna get done this day. So say I'm gonna pick 1 to 3 important things that I'm gonna get done during my project time. So this is my daily preparation for what I can get done. And if it's a day where I'm on wards or a day where I'm in clinic the full day, there's nothing that's getting written down because that's what's happening that day. But on days where, most of us are academic. We have some days where there's other things going on, or maybe you are on boards, but you still have a meeting or something you want to do. So just look at your day. I look at my Outlook, look at your to-do list, see what things were at the top of your to-do list for the week. Start writing those in as tasks for the day. You want to try to stick to only a few, because otherwise I think you set yourself up for being a little disappointed in what you can take off. Sometimes we under or overestimate how long something might take. So try to have a few top priorities, maybe some extra things that you hope to get done. But if you don't, you can just carry them over maybe at the top of your next day. And then you schedule those actions or these to-dos around your major blocks of time. Ideally, you would have made a meeting with yourself, blocked off some time to do them. And you can get them done then. All right, I already said this once, but here's another tip for your time. Don't have your email open when you have your chunk of time to do other work. Ideally, don't have any notifications on your phone, or put your phone somewhere where you can't see it. I think these pesky watches are a little bit of a problem, although I really have grown to love mine, but it is buzzing a lot, and I'm usually like, why is it buzzing? Turn it off. You don't need you probably have way too many things on. Again, turning off the notifications. There are some programs, like if you're on your home computer, that you can install too, that won't let you use the internet or certain programs at scheduled times. Like you can turn it off so that if you're someone who's really tempted to not get your work done when you need to, you can really shut down your capabilities. But I think most of us need to be plugged into something electronic to get to get things done. Cassidy says, do not disturb mode on your phone. Yeah, great. Or on her watch. Chris, I have not used focus modes in Apple OS. Is that for I'm going to ask you, you can put in the chat, is that for the desktop, or is it for all their products?
Sorry, it's actually on all three. It's on watch, iPhone, and desktop. You just have to have them all updated to the most recent version. And it's basically a do not disturb that allows specific things through. So you can have specific apps that you want to notify to allow to notify you. You can have specific people whose texts get through. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm still getting used to it, but yeah, I like it.
Oh yeah, Cassidy's showing us on her screen if people are looking at it. You're muted though, Cassidy.
Yeah, I use this a lot, and it's hard to see, sorry about that, but there's different ones for personal work. So at work, nobody can get through except for work or my family is blocked during work time. And they'll have to call twice to get through, and their text messages, it will show up and say, she's on do not disturb or focus mode. Do you really want to send a text right now? And then when I'm on personal time, I have my family be able to send things through, but to like my most common work contacts, I just have them blocked from having calls. And so it's more at my convenience that I'll check things. And then I have a Zen mode where it actually affects the screens so that I only can see one screen that has mindfulness apps on it, and that's it. And I have to search for my email. I have to search for everything else. Yeah. So it's a great thing
Make
to
it harder.
Distractions.
Awesome. I'm going to have to check that out so I can add it here as something to recommend looking at. I think do not disturb is great. And I also think working at the VA, when you get no cell reception for your phone or your watch, you can just like walk out and be like, oh, I have like 20 messages that I missed while I was there today. That also works. But I think the other options are a little more tenable. All right, so if you don't have notifications off, I guess look at focus mode, do not disturb, or just turn off the things that you don't want to get through to you. My next tip for something you can try for staying focused during your block of time where you're working on a project or working on something you need to get done is the Pomodoro method. I personally don't use this, but I know it's been very helpful for people to focus. And so what you're going to do is set a 25-minute timer. So you can use your phone. They actually have lots of apps, like a Pomodoro app that just has like a 25-minute timer on it. I don't know why the symbol seems to be like a tomato, but that's what it is. So decide what you're going to work on. We'll work on it for 25 minutes. Don't stop. Don't let people bother you. Take a 5-minute break. And then you repeat that. So they say repeat it 4 times. So basically 2 hours. And then you get a longer break. So I think it just depends on how much time you have. But if you have trouble focusing and just doing intense work, this might be an option for you or something to try. Oh, it's Italian, Chris says. That's the tomato? Okay. I don't think my slide changed. Hold on. I must have had that slide twice. All right. So that's my end of scheduling, my time management piece. So again, that was this do part of your 4 steps for getting things done. So you're going to collect and capture everything. You're going to organize it, plan it out, prioritize, see what's important. Then you're going to do it, and that involves managing your calendar and your schedule, and also blocking out your time to get it done. And then the last step here in getting things done is to review things. I just liked this image. I showed it twice, but basically this to-do list of make a to-do list, check the first thing off, realize you've already accomplished 2 things, and reward yourself with a nap. You know, maybe not so simple, but you can reward yourself from time to time with a nap if you're getting things done. So in this step 4, where you're reviewing, I recommend that you're looking at your calendar and the things you want to do at least weekly or monthly. You need to know what's upcoming in your due dates. So like, when is my updated CV due? When is my grant due? When is that? When do I need to get back to somebody on a request? So know those due dates. When is my poster due? When, you know, what conference am I going to? We all have many of these things. Some of them have dates and some of them do not have hard dates. So you may need to create yourself a hard date. You're going to go back to your step 2 of like organize and plan. So this is an ongoing process, and you might have chosen something to work on and then realize, I can't do this right now. Something else has come up. It's a priority. I got to push that other thing off, which is why I like electronic lists, because I can just reset the due date or, you know, write to do it in the future. You know, also in the reviewing step is just looking at the things you did get done. So if you can review the week before and you get to see all the things you are getting done, you can make some time to look at just lists of ideas, or it's recommended have a list about like someday maybe I'm going to do this thing. And that doesn't have to be a work related thing. That can be a life related thing. Like maybe you wanted to, books you want to read, a place you want to go, like those should be on there too, and something that you're reviewing. And then you can reward yourself. So whether that's, you know, maybe that's a rare thing. I don't think we really do it that much. It doesn't have to be big. It can be a break or taking a day off, doing something you like. You know, when you've meeting your deadlines and you're staying on top, we also need to take breaks. And so having some built-in reward for accomplishing something large, we should probably do it more. And, you know, you can have fun doing things too. All right, so here's my summary. Productivity of the word is a habit. It's learned practices that you can put into place, going to make you accountable, going to make people know what to expect from you. You know, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in the time that I said I would. So it's something worth investing your time in up front, and then you'll reap rewards on the end of not having to be, you know, scrambling or missing deadlines, or, you know, people will want to work with you if you're doing that. So my first for email is don't let email distract you. Use the 5 Ds and the 2-minute rule, and also do your email in chunks of time. My second summary is to conquer your to-do list with the 4 steps of capturing, planning and organizing, doing it, and reviewing it regularly. And then third is to schedule your time wisely, using those blocks of time so that you have time for more important things or leisurely things, family, friends, hobbies, activities, all those things we want to be doing and excelling at work and at home. And with that, that was my final slide. So I invite, if this spurred anything in you or other tips or recommendations that I didn't get to, like the focus, other things, invite you to unmute and kind of comment or weigh in on something that you do that you think is useful or something new that you might try after this talk today.